There is a reason why all things are as they are. For there is
something at work in my soul which I do not understand. A rage the likes of which should never escape. How clear and vivid and cruel.
And yet, the world seems full of good men.
Even if there are monsters in it.
This show is about how within all of us, we have secrets, we have demons.
We all do things which cause us shame.
It rediscovers some of the great myths of Gothic fiction.
My name is Dorian Gray.
With all the scale that you would lavish on a major motion picture.
Imagine a world where science and superstition walk hand in hand.
It takes you on an extraordinary journey. You never know what's coming next.
So much of my inspiration for writing the show was to really commit to exploring some of these iconic characters in a new way.
This is a real chance to elevate a genre.
To put your personal mark on this show is something that someone in my position, quite frankly, would give their right arm for.
Penny Dreadful is a show where characters from literature mix with the world of Victorian London.
There is only one worthy goal.
Piercing the tissue that separates life from death.
There's a reason we're still reading Frankenstein 200 years later. Why Dorian Gray provokes our thoughts. And Dracula still frightens us. They speak to something deeply human.
My name is Victor Frankenstein.
I thought I just wanted to do a Frankenstein story because it was such a disturbing work of art. But then I began to realize, within a 10-year span, there was a great explosion of horror literature.
At the end of the 1880s, you have a real flowering of the culture of the monstrous. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde arise, Dorian Gray, and Dracula.
There was something in the air in 1891. The world was changing.
The British Empire's at its height, driven by power and wealth and coal.
Science was progressing at such an alarming rate.
There was a sense of decadence, a sense that something might be coming to an end.
They were on the cusp of the modern world, with both the promise and the horror of what might be coming. These writers were able to transmutate that anxiety that Londoners felt about science, evolution, into stories about mystery and suspense and anxiety. And I thought, wouldn't it be fascinating if I took the inspiration from Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, and Oscar Wilde and started melding these stories into one sort of new narrative.
We all do things which cause us shame. Sins we have committed. We hope they'll go away.
My original impression of Penny Dreadful was excitement, really, because it felt like, finally, an attempt to take seriously many of the great figures from horror fiction over the last 200 years.
No more let life divide.
Victor Frankenstein is probably the closest to his literary ancestor.
He's some sort of punk doctor, driven with this maniacal sense of control. It would appear you have an Egyptian man of no particular age who at some point decided to sharpen his teeth, cover himself in hieroglyphics. Or you have something else altogether.
I knew I wanted to bring in elements of Dracula without dealing with Dracula himself. Our version of Dorian Gray is somewhat different than Oscar Wilde's. We wanted to explore eternity and its essential sadness.
Life is completely transitory. Everything around him changes and dies.
He fears human connection because of his unique state until he meets Vanessa Ives.
I like to see one extraordinary thing every day.
The literary origins of this piece create many strands of story.
We all have our curses, don't we?
But there are some new fictional characters that weave together to create a really, really rich tapestry.
Vanessa Ives is our journey into the story.
There's much we don't know and must discover.
In 1891 London, conventions of the day kept women bound up, quite literally corseted. I thought to create a woman who had to live in that society, and yet within her had these monstrous yearnings for liberation, would be a very compelling central character.
I have a need for a gentleman, not hesitant to engage in dangerous endeavors.
She represents the heart of Penny Dreadful and the duality between good and evil.
There are things within us all that can never be unleashed.
There is more to Vanessa than meets the eye. Some kind of power beyond the natural. Sir Malcolm is an African explorer in search of his daughter. He's one of those men driven by obsession. Do not be amazed at anything you see, and don't hesitate.
There's the part of Sir Malcolm that's very manipulative. He'll use everybody around him to achieve his own ends. Ethan is an American sharpshooter.
I have such sins at my back that it would kill me to turn around. They've all got demons, and there's a demon in him, too.
We have continued use of a man of your skills.
He's drawn into Vanessa's story, and through his eyes, we witness the unfolding of this mysterious world.
This story is a lot about these characters being forced to open up and reveal themselves for who they are. That sounds like a warning.
It's an invitation.
The characters all have things within them that are not accepted, but they're usually the very things that empower them.
We all do things to survive.
What for me is fabulous is if you knew nothing of Victorian literature, nothing of any of these books, you could come to the series and take away a hugely enjoyable, exhilarating and dark journey.
We can lose every battle except the last.
People ask me all the time about the title. What is a Penny Dreadful? Why did you name it Penny Dreadful? Penny Dreadfuls were periodicals in the Victorian era that mostly dealt with stories of mystery and suspense, and they would be continued from week to week to week. So I thought what I'm writing is sort of a Penny Dreadful, and it just stuck. I just love the Victorian era because we have a chance to create something completely unique.
We are shooting! Shooting!
We were faced with the challenge. Who directs the first 2 episodes?
So we're going to do a little second team rehearsal.
I love Bayona's work, and the very first thing he said to me was, for something to be frightening, it has to be true. And I thought, that's the director I want to work with.
Right! Leg! Right! Right!
One of the things that I like about Penny Dreadful is the mystery.
What do you seek to escape?
Perhaps the same thing you do.
You have characters touching the uncertainty of life. They feel alone, they feel pain, but you can see at the same time they have a beautiful, beautiful soul, each of them.
I found working on Penny Dreadful to be a very refreshing experience.
It's an adrenaline rush, and when you come out of it at the end of the day, there's a huge sense of gratification in that.
I got into the project so much, and it is beautiful.
The canvas is very, very wide. The period is extraordinary. And my job really was to make sure we crewed it with astonishingly gifted, Oscar-nominated individuals, because I felt that that's what it deserved.
It's a great period to reproduce. So a lot of wealth of design detail, which is fantastic.
Ogni personaggio ha delle sorprese dentro, che sto più importante per cambiare un'evoluzione del carattere, secondo me, è il colore.
3, 2, 1, action!
Most of the show is quite physical. There's going to be some nice moments which I hope can be quite graphic.
This is the location for 527 Vanessa meets Malcolm.
Here's who I'm in awe of. All the heads of departments. I wrote 8 hours, but I don't make any of it happen. They're the people who bring it to life.
I've never been a part of a set where everywhere you turned, 360 degrees, you felt like you were actually on a street in the slums in 1891. And I think that helps everyone feel like they are immersed in this world.
I think the audience is going to be blown away. The detail in which everything is created, the sets are just beautiful.
This room is 1891 London at its most luxurious. Our designers have done an incredible job.
For me, the heart of the whole design comes from the script. I feel like I need to get inside the characters and make the world that they would have naturally created for themselves.
Jonathan McKinstry did a spectacular job. You can see the grandeur of these characters, and you really had a sense of being in London at that time.
This department's responsible for changing people from human beings into creatures and monsters. Don't go up there.
The one thing we said very early on is we don't want CG monsters.
That's actually the hook that got me. This isn't really about effects. This is about character design. The chance to put classic literary villains on screen. The process to turn an actor into a character involves covering them in sticky goop, producing plaster copies of them. We then sculpt over that to create the three-dimensional changes for the character that we wish to do. We produce them as prosthetic pieces, and they get glued back on the actor, hopefully so accurately that you can't quite tell what's fake and what's real.
Come in.
Why did you form a monster so hideous that even you turned from me in disgust?
Eternal youth, infinite passion, pleasures subtle and secret, wild joys and wilder sins. He was to have all these things.
And the white, sharp teeth of blood-dripping mouth like those of a wild beast.
These characters have been devalued over the years because we're so familiar with them.
Why me? Because you were unafraid to look beneath.
What we're trying to do is bring them back to their original state when they were truly provocative and frightening. So the show is very bloody, the show is very erotic, and we don't shy away from any of that, because I think to do that would be a disservice.
Do you believe there is a half-world between what we know and what we fear?
Yes.
Very wise. This way, please.
When you transform a life, you're making it anew. It is our burden now.
How far do we go?
I dare not hazard an answer.
We shall live with our guilt, you and I.